Hey, welcome back to Snapbolt Games. My name is Max, and I'm actually going to be doing something a little bit different here today. I'm not going to be running through a league. I am going to be talking about Magic. I'm going to be talking about format health, mostly of Pauper, a little bit of Modern as well. And I'm going to be discussing potential bans, what I think should be banned or not. And before I get into that topic, that's going to be our main topic, let me shout out the channel. It's youtube.com/snapbolt. Go check it out. There's a link in the description below to go to the channel. There's a bunch of gameplay videos on there, a bunch of Modern, bunch of Pauper as well, so something for everyone. Go check it out. If you like the content, you can please subscribe to my channel to support me. That would help me out a lot. You can always comment down below on this video. Let me know what you think of the ban discussion here, of what I think about the cards, and just, voice your opinion. You can throw a like on this video, and you can ring the bell after you subscribe as well if you want to see when my new videos come out. So thank you so much for your support. And now I'm going to get right into this. Again, so this video is just going to be a pretty concise video talking about, mostly it's going to be about the format health and what I think needs to be banned in Pauper to save it. So obviously I don't think the format health is good. Um, so I think there needs to be some changes. I haven't been playing as much Pauper just because the format is just so crazy right now. So let's just get into it, and let me start talking about the first card here. All right. Card number one here is the boogeyman of the Pauper format, and this is Chatterstorm, to no surprise. So Modern Horizons 2 really shook up Pauper in a big way, and thanks to Chatterstorm and also Galvanic Relay, the next card I'm going to talk about. But Storm is just essentially so broken in Pauper because you have all the best Storm enablers that have basically ever been printed, all these legacy power level cards. Dark Ritual, Lotus Petal, Rite of Flame, Seething Song. That's just to name a few. You've Cabal Ritual. Then you have decent mana fixing with the Chromatic Spheres and Stars. So it doesn't really matter how bad the Storm payoff is. Generally, Storm is essentially always going to be broken. You see some examples where it's not, like Weather the Storm is still a strong card, even though it only gains life. And then there's also cards like Reaping the Graves, which is strong as well, but it doesn't actually, get you towards winning the game with that card. It takes a bunch of creatures getting back, but even then there's Cycle Storm. So there's always some way to break Storm in Pauper because, again, look at the creatures you have in Pauper compared to the spells. You have Ponder, Preordain, Dark Ritual, Lightning Bolt. These spells are so powerful. They're some of the best spells ever printed in Magic. And then imagine like your top end creature, the biggest baddest creature to, like, let's say reanimate or to put into play in Pauper is probably still Ulamog's Crusher, and that's just an 8 mana 8/8 that has to attack each turn, Annihilator 2, that just dies to Doomblade or Cast Down. So the spells in Pauper are just so strong that you can just easily enable something like Chatterstorm here. And this card is really just allowing you, what this card is doing is not that it's so broken, but it really warps the format around itself because when you have these broken enablers, you're able to storm off even as early as turn one before the opponent can play a land. Then there's no way to interact with that. So it's just such a feel bad if your opponent just goes, like storm, Chatterstorm, attack for 10 on turn one. You're just like, okay, well, I have a tap land in my hand, and there's just nothing I can do. So it really plays just super unfair, even if you're just making 1/1s. So I really think Chatterstorm absolutely needs to go. I think it needs to be banned because I'm gonna get to talking about Galvanic Relay in a second. But like, let's say you were to ban Galvanic Relay and then leave Chatterstorm, it still just warps the format too much around itself. Forcing people to play like multiple copies of main deck Echoing Truth, Echoing Decay, main deck Duress. And yes, the Chatterstorm deck, the Storm deck would not be as strong without Galvanic Relay. Chatterstorm still is, I think, the problem because it's like the win con. I think Chatterstorm definitely needs to go. But let's move on and let's talk a little bit about Galvanic Relay here. Let me see here. Let me make sure this is working. Okay, looks good. So Galvanic Relay, next card I want to talk about. This honestly is probably a better card than Chatterstorm. I was skeptical about this card. I wasn't sure how good it was actually going to be when I started playing Pauper after MH2. But the first game I put Galvanic Relays into my Chatterstorm deck, I was just like, okay, well, I would never play Storm again without Galvanic Relay. So the problem with this card, what it allows you to do specifically like right now in Chatterstorm, is it just gives you like so much redundancy because you have 4 Storm enablers now. And you can even do this. What is so broken is you set up your hand, then you play a bunch of rituals. You play like 3, 4 rituals, a Lotus Petal, maybe a cantrip or two, and then you can have Chatterstorm plus Galvanic Relay in your hand. So you can go like Storm off, first day of class into Chatterstorm, and then on that same main phase, you just also cast Galvanic Relay, maybe 1 or even 2 Galvanic Relays, and then they go, okay, I have the Echoing Decay, kill all your squirrels. You're like, sure, no problem. I Galvanic Relayed once or twice. I have 10 cards that I can cast next turn. I'm just going to Storm off again next turn, and there's nothing you can do. Even though you had the specific answer, Galvanic Relay just easily allows you to reload, and it's just messed up in multiples because think of this hand of just like Rite of Flame, Rite of Flame, Rite of Flame, Seething Song, then you play 2 Galvanic Relays, and then next turn you're getting so many spells because when you have multiple relays, they stack just really well. Because what in that situation, the first relay gets you 5 cards, the second relay gets you 6 cards. So next turn you'd be basically able to play 11 cards. So the problem I see is, let's say you just ban Chatterstorm and you leave Galvanic Relay because you want to say, oh, it's a fun Storm enabler, and there's no other broken Storm card that you can necessarily pair with it. I still think Galvanic Relay is as much of a problem because if you just build like some type of Storm deck that has Relay as a payoff, it's pretty easy to draw your entire deck by just ritualing and cantripping and then playing Galvanic Relay. And then on that relay, let's say you exile 12 cards or something. On the next turn, you're going to be able to Storm off and relay again. And there's no real good way to counter that. That's the problem because, like, let's say turn 3, you have 3 mana open, you cast a Dark Ritual. The opponent's in a bad spot because they go, okay, well, I can counter this Dark Ritual. And if they do, they're tapped out. Then you just go, okay, now cast 3 more rituals and then Galvanic Relay anyway. It doesn't matter. And then if they don't counter the Dark Ritual and they just let you play a couple rituals and then you put Galvanic Relay on the stack, they can't counter it because the Storm mechanic is so broken. There's no hate in Pauper like the other formats. There's no cards that say you can only play 1 spell a turn. Those are all at rare. Or like, each spell you play costs 1 more to cast, or Thalia's. There's none of this good Storm kind of like spell hate in Pauper because they just don't print those effects at common, which is another reason why Storm is such a problem. So moving forward here, I would say the Chatterstorm deck is absolutely a problem. Even if, let's say, you think Affinity is a better deck than Chatterstorm, the problem is how much Chatterstorm warps the meta around it. You can't play any mid-range deck anymore because you're just like, you can't play Jund. Even if you played 4 Echoing Decay, Storm can easily just either duress the Echoing Decay or again go off, then Galvanic Relay and keep going off, and then you won't be able to find enough Echoing Decays. So I think Chatterstorm needs to be banned. I think Galvanic Relay also needs to be banned. I really think you have to hit both. I don't think you want to hit one or the other and see if it works out. So I think to save this format, you definitely need to ban both those cards. Then, wait a second, hold on. Let's say, this is a 3-deck format right now. There's Chatterstorm, there's Affinity. I think those are the top 2 decks. And then there's also Blue-Black, which is strong. There's a couple of flavors of Blue-Black, but, they get to play Echoing Truth, Echoing Decay, counter spells, and Duress. So they have a lot of action against Storm, and they can hang with Affinity. But, I mean, essentially, if you just take out Galvanic Relay and Chatterstorm, then what do you have? Then you have Affinity, which is potentially the best deck right now, and that it would just take over. So I don't know exactly what you should do, honestly, for Affinity, but I have some things that I'm going to talk about that I think are options. One card I've heard floated around as an idea is this. Just ban a Tog. I think this is probably the option I would go with, just because there's one other ban option that I think you could do for Affinity that I'm going to get to in a second, but I think a Tog is the best choice. And let me just get into why. I guess I'm going to have to kind of spoil what the other ban option I think would be, and then to talk about both kind of together, because they kind of go hand in hand. So I think banning a Tog is one decent option. Because again, if you ban Chatterstorm and Relay, then Affinity is just guaranteed going to be the best deck. I think a Tog gives it that combo potential, but honestly, banning a Tog might not be enough. And here's what I think would be decent, which I think they will definitely not do. And let me just pull this over here. This is just kind of a screenshot of all the new artifact lands that come in tapped. They're indestructible and they're dual lands from Modern Horizons 2. And I think these, honestly, oh, Power Depot is not supposed to be on there. That's not uncommon. My mistake. It doesn't matter. Forget Power Depot. But all these bridges, I think these are a problem. And I think you could just ban every bridge. And it wouldn't be that crazy because in other formats, they have banned all the artifact lands. And I think these just make Affinity a little bit too strong. So here's kind of the back and forth. I think a Tog would be a reasonable ban because it would lower the power level of the Affinity decks, especially if you want to keep these bridges in the format. Because these do other cool things. They allow other like mid-range decks to just be like Galvanic Blast decks. They fix your mana. They give you like some staying power against decks like Ponza become worse. Gorilla Shaman becomes worse. But they would have to ban, all the bridges. There's no way they just ban like the blue-red bridge and the blue-black bridge. There's no way. So either you ban all the bridges or none, and I don't think they're going to do that. And again, they lead to some other cool aspects. You also have like Cleansing Wildfire, targeting your own indestructible land. So you essentially, your land doesn't die, then you just get to ramp, draw a card. So that's a really cool aspect for Pauper to have. But here's the problem. If you ban a Tog, and let's say the bans come out for Pauper, if there is ever any bans, these are what I think should happen. Let's say the bans come out and they're Chatterstorm, Relay, and a Tog. Those three cards get banned from Pauper. Now the problem is Affinity, I think, is still going to be the best deck, maybe or maybe not. But some people are like already just, either cutting some Togs or playing some counter spells. So you can just do like either this controlling artifact deck. I don't have it pulled up here, but the new Mirror Enforcer Sojourner's Companion, you get 8 Mirror Enforcers now, and then plus the artifact lands, fixing your mana, and giving you a much better game against Gorilla Shaman because a lot of your lands are indestructible now. It makes Affinity really strong, even if you were to ban a Tog. But if I had to choose, I would keep the artifact lands in the format, and I would just choose to ban, I think, a Tog. I don't think there's really any other ban that hits Affinity hard enough. I guess you could make an argument for Sojourner's Companion and or Mirror Enforcer, but that's just such a weird ban. I don't see that happening. I also don't see them banning all these bridges, so I'm kind of worried that if action is taken against Pauper and they just ban Relay and Chatterstorm, now Affinity just becomes the best deck by far, like hand down, no question about it. And I don't think anything needs to be banned from like the blue base decks. Like I think in the past, maybe Spellstutter Sprite needed to be banned, but especially if you have these bridges and Affinity is a strong deck, Spellstutter's not even that good against Affinity. I don't think you need to ban Spellstutter or Ninja or Delver count, nothing like that from the blue decks right now. They are really strong. I mean, Ponder Preordain. You've heard, if you've watched my other Pauper videos, you'll hear me like sing the praises of Ponder Preordain. It's just so good in that format. It makes the blue decks so consistent, and you don't flood. You have great card selection, etc., etc. But Spellstutter Sprite is one of the best blue cards, but I don't think that's going to be banned. And I also don't think these bridges are going to be banned, but I think it would be reasonable if you just took out the bridges, Relay, and Chatterstorm. The format could kind of stabilize. Now, I guess, is kind of coming to the wrap up of what I think needs to happen to save Pauper. Because again, these three decks, Affinity, Chatterstorm, and the blue-black decks, it's kind of a 3-deck format right now, and it's not good. Again, Chatterstorm is the main problem because like what I was saying, it can just storm off as early as turn 1, and other decks can't interact that early, especially if you're on the draw. And even if you're on the the play, or let's say you're on the draw, but Chatterstorm goes off turn 2. Like if you're like a Delver deck, you have to play your Delver on 1, and you just don't have any interaction at that point. So it just goes off too early, too consistency. Galvanic Relay is actually probably more of a problem than Chatterstorm. Before I go, actually, I wanted to make one more point. So people say, well, what if you just ban Galvanic Relay and leave Chatterstorm? Because then this deck becomes weaker. Becomes a lot weaker because, again, sometimes you're just forced to go for it and you're like, okay, I hope they don't have Echoing Truth or Echoing Decay. You storm off, you make a bunch of hasty squirrels attack, and then they just go Echoing Decay and you have no cards left. It makes the deck much worse without Galvanic Relay. But again, the problem with that is the deck still has the exact same consistency as far as going off on turn 1 or 2. So you could just build, who was it? I'm blanking on. It's like a big Pauper content creator, and he kind of popularized the mono green Chatterstorm deck with just forests, and you just try to go off like as early as turn 1 every game. So you could just build the deck in that fashion, and yes, it's has a little less staying power without relay, but you still have the problem of going off too early. So Chatterstorm, I think, definitely needs to go. I think Galvanic Relay needs to go. It's just too strong. Even if there's no Storm enablers in the format, I don't know if I made this point, it's easy to draw your deck, and then you can either find some combo or just get too much stuff. You can just get too many spells, where you can just easily overwhelm the opponent. And I think if you're going to ban these two, which I think you need to do, I think you need to take action against Affinity too. What are the options? A Tog is an option. Banning some number of artifact lands, whether it's these or some of the other ones, is an option. Obviously, I think the bridges are more of a problem, being indestructible and fixing your mana. So I think the bridges are an option. I guess you could make a case for, Mirror Enforcer or Sojourner's Companion, but I don't think that's good. So I think the ban should be a Tog. So I think the starting point would be good. Ban a Tog, ban Relay, ban Chatterstorm, then see where the format ends up. Again, if you do that, I think Affinity will still be the best deck. I wouldn't hate banning the bridges, but I don't think that's going to happen. So we'll see what happens with Pauper. Right now, it's just in a rough spot. I love playing Pauper. I love to brew in Pauper. That's my favorite thing to do, and I feel like I just can't do that right now. I'm really disappointed with no bans in Pauper. It's been a while since Modern Horizons 2 came out, and really changed the format. I mean, the next set, Forgotten Realms, the D&D set, is about to come out, I think in 2 days on Magic Online. And we haven't seen any action taken against Pauper. It's like they just don't care about this format. So that kind of sucks. I just can't really get into the format when it's just like, if I play Affinity, sure, it's a good deck, and I'm just playing Affinity Mirrors all day. It's just not that fun. So I've just been playing more Modern recently. Hopefully they'll take some action. I'm not telling them to take my advice. I don't know if this is right, but let me know what you think about it. These are the bans I would do in Pauper, and we'll go from there. All right, I wanted to do a quick Modern discussion as well. I won't take quite as long on Modern, but Modern is in a pretty decent spot after Modern Horizons 2. It's been a lot of fun. I've liked playing it, but there are some cards I want to talk about here. And there's the two, I guess, boogeymen of Modern right now. Number one is Urza Saga. Let's see here. Make sure this is good. Yep. Urza Saga. This is like the new powerhouse. Came out of the gates as the best card out of Modern Horizons 2. If you don't know what this does, it's an enchantment land. When it enters the battlefield, it gains add 1 colorless, and then on the second chapter, you can create constructs, and then on the third chapter, you get to search your library for an artifact card with mana cost 0 or 1 and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. So this card, I think I'm not even sure if they realized while creating this card that the turn after you play it, when the second chapter goes off, you get to make a construct essentially. And then on turn, when the third chapter is on the stack, after you draw a card during your main phase, you can still activate the second ability and then sacrifice it and then go get a 0 or 1 drop artifact. So you get so much value out of this land. You just play the Saga, the next turn you make a construct, the next turn, as the third chapter is on the stack, you make another construct and go get an artifact. So now this land that can't be countered made you 2 constructs and got you a good 1 mana or 0 mana artifact, whatever that may be. There's some hate cards you can play main deck, and you got 3 artifacts. So now you have at least 2 3/3s. If you have an artifact deck, you might have made like 2 10/10s, uncounterable, and it's just so much value out of a land. I'm not really going to say what needs to or doesn't need to be banned in Modern. I've had a good time playing it. I just want to say I think this card is a little bit too strong, and if each ability just said, or at least the second ability even, just said you gain this ability until end of turn to only make one construct, I think the card would be much more reasonable, still be really strong, but I think it was just a little bit too pushed. And the fact that you can make two constructs out of your land, it's just too much value. I'm not saying you need to ban Urza Saga, but this card kind of goes in so many decks. I've seen Tron decks play it, I've seen Blue Light Control decks play it, I've seen even Jund mid-range decks just play 4 Urza Saga and do well. So it's just like a card like this that literally just goes into everything because it provides so much value, let alone the Affinity decks. It's just a little bit too overbearing. But that leads me to the card that's actually been doing better, putting up better results that I've been loving, and that is Ragavan, this monkey here. This card is just everywhere right now. It's all over the top eights. This card is just also a little bit too pushed. 1 mana, 2/1. And when it deals combat damage to a player, you create a treasure, so you ramp and you exile the top card of their library until end of turn. You may cast that card, and you can use the treasures to cast off color cards. And it has dash. So this is like a 1 mana 2/1, which is already a good rate. It pressures them, it ramps you, it draws you cards, and it's a hasty threat with dash. And dash can even protect it from sorcery speed removal. So this monkey is insane. It's everywhere. I don't think it's going anywhere. So um, I think monkey is here to stay. They don't usually ban cards like this, but maybe if it's just too dominant and it's just like, 7 out of 8 of the top 8 decks or something. Blue-red Murktide is just so strong right now. You've heard me talk a lot about the blue-red Delver deck that I've been playing. I want to test and play some more monkeys like other people are playing as well, but this card is just all over the top 8s. So again, I'm not saying necessarily that you need to take action against these two cards, but they're all over Modern right now and they're really taking over. And let me talk about one more card here. I actually wanted to talk about Dragon Rage Channel, and I wanted to talk about this card actually, and then there was one more card. I wanted to talk about one more card before I get to kind of the main point I wanted to talk about with Modern. And Dragon Rage Channeler is maybe even seeing more play than Ragavan. I think this card may be the best card out of Modern Horizons 2, but again, they typically don't ban these quote unquote fair cards like Ragavan and Dragon Rage Channeler because you're playing this 1 mana threat, and yeah, you're getting so much out of your 1-drop with these two cards, but typically, I mean, you're not doing anything like putting a Gristlebrand into play on turn 1, drawing your deck and killing them. You're just playing your 1/1 kind of like Delver type creature, protecting it with counter spells or interaction, and then just like, gaining advantage turn over turn, almost like a Planeswalker, but it's the same thing as Delver. You play Delver on turn 1 in Legacy, and then you have Daze, Force of Will, and then it only takes a couple turns of hitting them, and then before they know it, they're dead. And Dragon Rage Channeler and Ragavan kind of do the same thing. This card's just so much better than Delver. It's easy to turn on Delirium, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Surveil is the best part of the card. That's such a good prowess ability. It's insane. You never draw lands. If they have a Rest in Peace out against you and you're a Murktide deck, you just bin your Murktide with it. You don't have to draw it. This card is my pick for best card out of Modern Horizons 2. I don't think it's going to get banned. But I do have one option of a card that's not really doing anything fun that I think would be a decent ban. I don't, again, know if anything needs to happen or if it's going to. But let's see. Let me put this over here. Okay, there we go. And that's Mishra's Bauble. I've talked about this a little bit in previous videos, but I don't think this card is doing anything fun. This card is just, it's just doing so many like dumb things. It's the main thing it's doing, it's the best enabler for Delirium by far. So it's so good at enabling Delirium for 0 mana that there's no reason to play any other cool cards that would enable Delirium. Like, you can play cards like Seal of Fire. You can play other random enchantments. You can play Tarfire, the tribal sorceries. You can do cool stuff in order to enable Delirium. But when you have Bauble, there's just no question. And this card, here, one second. This card in conjunction with Dragon Rage Channeler it's just such a good combo. If you've watched my Blue-Red Delver decks, I'll like play a Channeler on turn 1 with only 1 land in my hand, and then I'll just go Bauble, Bauble. I get to scry 2, essentially, Surveil 2, looking for a land, make sure I draw a land next turn, and I'm in the process, I'm often turning on my Channeler as early as I've turned it on turn 1. I went Channeler, Bauble, Bauble, surveilled some cards into the graveyard, and then I had land from a fetch land, artifact from Bauble, and I surveilled 2 cards into the yard, had a Channeler on turn 1. It's just, Bauble is just doing dumb stuff like that. It's you know, doing other stuff like enabling Urza, or just the scry trick of you play Bobble and you target yourself, you see what it is. If it's a card you want, you don't fetch your fetch land. If it's a bad card, you just fetch it away. So it's almost like a scry. It's just so good. There's a reason it's an uncommon and it's $45 on Magic Online. It's like a $15 uncommon or $20 uncommon in Paper Magic, but I think this would be a decent ban just because then it would really open up the doors for playing. You have choices of other Delirium enablers, and you wouldn't be able to enable Delirium quite as fast. The other, I guess, biggest interaction that I definitely should talk about is just the stupid interaction of Bobble plus Luris. Luris is one of the best cards in Modern right now as a companion, and just being able to take Luris for 3 mana and then play Luris for 3 mana and play a 0 mana draw a card out of your graveyard is just so strong because a lot of the Luris decks they have a low land count, so you get stuck on 3 lands, but then you just run out of gas. You take Luris, you play it, you draw a card, and then you threaten to start playing 1 drops or 2 drops next turn with Luris. So I think a Bobble ban would be a solid choice. I definitely don't hate that. I don't think it's necessarily going to happen. I don't even think any action is going to be taken in Modern right now. But I don't think Channeler, Ragavan, or Saga are about to get banned. Maybe Saga, just because of the amount of value you get out of land. The only card that can really kind of hang toe to toe with Saga is Shattering Spree right now, because it's a cheap card that you can play for 1, and you can just answer all 3 cards you get out of Saga. And when I say 3 cards, you get Construct, and 0 or 1 drop. So Shattering Spree can trade 1 for 1 with Saga by tapping triple red, which is just insane to say. But most other cards can never 1 for 1 in Urza Saga because you get so much value and you can't counter it. So I could see an Urza Saga ban. I would like a Bobble ban just because I don't think this card is that fun. It just does a lot of dumb stuff. I think Channeler and Ragavan Monkey are safe for now, but it would be interesting to see them go. So that's the wrap up of my talk about Pauper, what needs to be banned in Pauper to save the format, and just some thoughts about Modern, what could be banned, what are the strongest cards, etc., etc. But again, I don't think any immediate action needs to be taken against Modern. I would like a Bobble ban, Urza Saga pushing it a little bit, but Ragavan and Trainer are kind of all over the top tables, so who knows? I think these cards are still stronger than Saga, but I don't think they're going to get banned. And Pauper, please ban Chatterstorm, please ban Relay, and then you got to take something out of Affinity, so who knows? So let me know what you think about this video. I'm having more fun, you know, talking about Magic. Um, Comment down below, subscribe to my channel if you want to support me. Thank you so much, and till next time, peace.